when citizens see the state itself dependent on philanthropy for its core functions, does it in the long run increase their confidence in the state and whet their appetite to pay more taxes to the state? Or does it, or is there a possibility that under some circumstances, while that might give us short-term wins, it actually corrodes the legitimacy of the state or the confidence people have in the state? I mean, again, you've been engaged with this question, I know but given that this is a state placed in the context of democracy, and in the end, a sustainable system will require that allegiance, what do you think the public-private partnership does to, in a sense, people's confidence and the democratic legitimacy of the state?
Well, I wish philanthropy was so big that we could actually take over some of these things. Philanthropy in the US is 2% of the economy. In India, it's not 0.2% of the economy. And so the role of philanthropy better be some super narrow role. One thing that's systemic is that helping out the poorest, the private sector isn't going to focus on that. So for example, the regulations to make payment banks work, that we invested tens of millions of dollars in terms of, helping consultants come in, and hopefully that becomes an enabling element. Encouraging a new rotavirus vaccine, which Raj Baum was the inventor, and we funded. Now Bharat makes at a very low price this new vaccine. Those are things that are philanthropy that, yes, if government was totally enlightened, they might have done those things. But funding pilots, how do you train teachers better? How do you organize schools in a different way? What's the best curriculum? Departments of education don't do much R&D, and they're very stuck with the status quo. And so philanthropists can shake things up. They can bring IQ in, they can bring better measurement in, but they are never, philanthropy is never the thing that is the long-term funder of the basic rights of the people, which include health and education. And Indian philanthropy, I think, will grow by 4 or 5 times. And I'm not just speaking about billionaires. I'm talking about very broadly. It can be a growth part of the economy, but it'll still be very, very, very tiny. And so the resources and the legitimacy for the long-term behavior in health and education, that is the state. And we don't do anything that isn't in partnership with the state. Yes, if I wanted short-term gains in Bihar vaccine coverage, we could have hired a bunch of people and done it in a side program. But then even I can't afford to do that on an ongoing basis, and it doesn't build capacity. So philanthropy, the hard thing about it is that in most of its programs, it has to help build state capacity. And getting that partnership right, making sure that philanthropy is not overreaching in terms of its role. Yes, criticize us if you see something you think we shouldn't be doing, but we are tiny. So one problem you can't complain about is that we're going to take on these big problems.
You're being a little modest. I mean, I think you're tiny in relation to the overall economy, but some would argue that not tiny in relation to the ability to change discourse and set standards in these particular areas of activity, particularly because these are areas which the state has abdicated. It wouldn't matter as much if the state had actually taken them seriously in the first place. That's often, in a sense, I think the nature of that argument. To put it provocatively, some people argue governments are happy to partner with philanthropists. They aren't happy to partner with their own people.
We haven't taken over any state thing. I mean, India had not introduced any new vaccines for a long time. And that's clearly a state function to decide, because the medical standards and the long-term affordability and the delivery system, that's very much a government thing. And so it's fair to say, did we prod, and write studies and, have expertise saying, yes, you should adopt these new vaccines. But at the end of the day, the government's representatives met, and that's a very sacred decision, because once you decide to do that, you shouldn't withdraw. You should understand that you can deliver it and you can finance it and things like that. And, so that makes perfect sense. The payment bank, the Reserve Bank of India, which is quite a competent group of people, it was up to them to decide what these payment bank regulations, and they didn't have as much money to study that question and go, how did it work in Kenya? What went wrong? What went well? We can encourage that. Even the vaccine coverage, we've been able to bring in very smart numeric people to help measure where is this system falling down. So it's strange. I guess, I'm a tiny bit less cynical about government than you are. And,
That's right.
and yes, it's definitely a
clarify.
glass half full. But, here we are, and look at, 10 years ago versus where we are today. There are very few negative trends. One of the problems of democracy is the name of the game is for politicians to say the other politicians are idiots. So, every time you pick up the newspaper, this politician is saying this guy's an idiot. So, who talks about the progress? Do people know that the childhood death rate has gone down as much as it has? Or, as bad as nutrition is, there are exemplars in the country. This Food Safety Board is done exactly the right thing. So, let me cheer you up. We can prod it, but it is going to be key. The economic miracles, those governments really played their role very, very well. And, underfinancing health, okay. I'm saying that, if democratically people decide that's a priority, I think that will accelerate the economic miracle.